You're sheltering enemies of the state, are you not?
Hans Landa is by far the smartest character in Inglourious Basterds. However, how did he know there were people hiding under the floorboards? There are many things you probably missed, and today I'll be going through all of it and almost analysing this introduction scene like a game of chess. But before that, it's important to know who Hans Landa is. He is described as a hawk. He's very observant, and he's always 10 steps ahead of you. A conversation with Hans Landa plays like a game of chess. However, in this game, you are the one always defending your king, as Hans is always the one on the attack. And even before analysing the first scene, knowing who Hans Landa is, the first and foremost point is how Hans probably knew beforehand he came to the house. As I'm going to state many times throughout this, Hans is extremely observant, and I would highly doubt a person like him would come to the house without any knowledge that Jews were hiding there. Maybe he did not know 100%, however, he hints that he knows as soon as he enters the house, and that he already has an idea that La Petite is hiding Jews. So Hans enters the house, and Hans takes the hand of the youngest girl, and this is for two reasons. He's trying to take her pulse, which he also does later on with another girl, but he walks up to the redhead because she is the most nervous and clearly the youngest. Remember who Hans Landa is. He is a master investigator, and she makes a fatal mistake. Hans goes on and says, "The rumours about your family are true." And you can see her head look up, almost as if she's thinking Hans knows about the Jews. The sheer panic that moves across her face when Landa mentions all of the rumours being true is visible just for a split second. But of course, Hans is not talking about them hiding Jews. He plays off as he's talking about how beautiful La Petite's family is. After Hans says that, she looks down for the second time. Also notice how Hans takes a pause between saying the rumours about your family and relieves the tension by mentioning how beautiful his family is. And this is one thing Hans does, he pauses a lot, and he does this mostly to watch people's reactions and how they'll react in that scenario. He then goes on to directly stare at the redhead girl. Pay attention to this because this is a key indicator that Hans knows something is up. He keeps his attention locked onto her as she could reveal more information. La Petite then offers the colonel some wine. He refuses and instead takes the hand of another daughter. This is the second time Hans does this. He is also checking her pulse and measuring her heart rate. My theory is that the girl's pulse is considerably lower and calmer than the redhead he checked earlier, which tells him everything he needs to know about who in the room is carrying the real secrets. Also notice that she is still looking down. After she fetches the milk, Hans stares directly at her, and she is still fixated on the same spot on the floor. Now some may argue this is simply nerves, as an SS colonel walking into your home would make anyone nervous at this time. But this is not the case. She has looked down to that specific spot more than once, and now Hans has noticed every single time. And then there's the milk itself. La Petite offers wine. Landa refuses. This is not a preference. Wine could have been poisoned before his arrival, a common resistance tactic that the French done in World War II. And Landa would be well aware of this, as he is always a step ahead. Then the scene shifts to her glancing down again, before looking directly at her father in fear, because she knows what she has just done. Her father knew it too, and you can see the look that he had already decided to tell Hans the truth to protect his daughters. As looking at her father is also signalling him and almost a reminder that there are Jews beneath them, telling her father without any words that he needs to do something about this. Either way, Landa catches all of it. Then after, Landa drinks the milk in one move, which definitely is a power move. But after that, he rates it and compliments it. He didn't have to say a word, but he does.
Monsieur, à votre famille et à vos vaches, je dis bravo.
Merci.
Because he is reminding them who is in control. He is the judge, and he decides what happens here. Then he tells the girls to leave, and this is the point where I'm 100% sure Landa for sure knew there were Jews hiding beneath the floor. Hans then suggests they speak in English, since his French is not so good.
De vous informer que j'ai épuisé l'étendue de mon français. Continuer à le parler si peu convenablement ne ferait que.
However, the French he uses is almost at an expert level of grammar, which tells us everything. He is fluent in French and he is claiming he cannot speak it. He also already knows that La Petite speaks English well. This just shows us Landa did his research before walking through that door, and it further confirms what he said earlier about the rumours about La Petite's family. Because now we know Lance has already been asking questions about the family in the village. He knew La Petite spoke English, and he knew the rumours as well. The only thing left Hans is waiting for now is La Petite to tell him exactly where they are, which he will soon enough. Hans Landa wants La Petite to know exactly who he is. To Hans, this is a game, and he is enjoying every second of it.
Please tell me what you've heard.
I've heard that the Führer has put you in charge of rounding up the Jews left in France, who are either hiding or passing for Gentile.
The Führer couldn't have said it better himself.
You also notice how his tonality shifts the moment the girls leave the room. The charm is still there, but underneath it, something colder emerges. He's no longer performing for an audience. He's simply toying with La Petite. But then La Petite makes a desperate mistake. He brings up the fact that the Germans already searched his house 9 months ago and found nothing.
The Germans looked through my house 9 months ago for hiding Jews and found nothing.
Think about this for a second. An innocent man would not give that information out. A guilty man would. And he does this because at this point he is desperately trying to get ahead of the accusation before it arrives to him. And if Landa had any remaining doubt before that moment, he certainly has none now. But notice how Hans brings out an enormous folder as if he is resourced with a lot of information. But we know Hans can recall most details entirely from memory, and we see him write almost nothing down. He did not need that folder for documentation. He already memorized everything. The folder is a prop, because every move Hans Landa makes and every little line he utters is full of purpose and meaning. And he's just toying with La Petite. Just like a game, he enjoys it. He's so level-headed and calculated. It makes him seem like he already knows all your secrets. And yet he speaks so cheerfully throughout this encounter, warmly, as if it's just a friendly visit between neighbours.
Please, Monsieur La Petite, this is your house. Make yourself comfortable.
There's also a small detail in the way he writes. It has been well documented that one of the most difficult physical tasks to perform under extreme stress, due to trembling hands and sweaty palms, is to write clearly with a pen. And Landa does this smoothly and without a single hesitation. And he does this in a room where La Petite is barely holding himself together. And Landa is so completely calm that his handwriting does not waver for a second. Hans then asks if La Petite knows his nickname.
Monsieur La Petite, are you aware of the nickname the people of France have given me?
He tells him he loves his title precisely because he has earned it.
I, on the other hand, love my unofficial title precisely because I've earned it.
But in a later scene with the bastards, Landa dismisses the same nickname entirely, calling it just a name that stuck. And this further tells us the character of Hans Landa. He is not motivated by hatred or ideology.
Some of them were Jews, but Jew hunter? Just a name that stuck.
He does not believe in the Nazi cause any more than he believes in any other cause. He is a job perfectionist, a pure professional who could not care less who he worked for or what he was assigned to hunt down. He was going to complete the task with complete devotion regardless. He even says this himself.
Finding people is my specialty, so naturally I worked for the Nazis finding people, and yes, some of them were Jews, but...
And he uses a nickname when it gives him power, and discards it when it does not. Everything Landa does serves one person, which is himself. And that's what makes him so terrifying. Most villains are driven by rage or an ideology. He is calm and here to do a job. Hans then hints directly that he already knows about the hiding Jewish family. He talks about the hawk, representing the German soldiers.
Now, if one were to determine what attribute the German people share with a beast, it would be the cunning and the predatory instinct of a hawk.
And the hawk would only look in places where a hawk would hide, but himself can think like a rat, representing the Jewish people.
But if one were to determine what attributes the Jews share with the beast, it would be that of the rat.
And he says subtly, consider the world a rat lives in.
Consider for a moment the world a rat lives in.
And where do rats live? In dark places underground, under floorboards. He's describing exactly where the Jews are hiding, which is right beneath his feet. And as Hans delivers this speech, he produces his pipe, which is enormous and oversized, far too big to be practical. And it's also a move showing that he has checkmated Lapidite, like a magician revealing his trick. And throughout this whole scene, it shows us everything Hans does is for control. As he's the one in charge, he takes out a bigger pipe. He asks for milk instead of wine. He invites the man of the house to sit at his own table.
Je vous en prie, venez me rejoindre à votre table.
Très bien.
And also at the beginning, he grabs Lapidite's hand after he said, after you, to show that he is in charge.
Certainement. Après vous.
He wants Lapidite to tell him his nickname.
That they call you the Jew Hunter?
Precisely.
And all these subtle power plays Hans does is to show that he is in control. We already know Hans knows at this point, and he straight up tells Lapidite at this point that honesty will be met with reward. And this is where the scene reveals something about Landa.
That is unless you have something to tell me that makes the conducting of a search unnecessary. I might add also that any information that makes the performance of my duty easier will not be met with punishment. Actually, quite the contrary. It will be met with reward. And that reward will be your family will cease to be harassed in any way by the German military during the rest of our occupation of your country.
Because I think the entire interrogation was never really about finding the Jews. He probably already knew where they were hiding. And if he didn't, he knew within 2 minutes. But the interrogation was to decide whether to spare Lapidite and his family. Lapidite was cooperative. He did not lie to the end. He did not fight. And so Hans gave him a way out. Almost twisted way, it was almost a sense of kindness. Hans could have walked through that door and had every single person in that house executed immediately. All of them guilty for sheltering enemies of the state. Instead, he sat down and gave Lapidite the opportunity to make a choice. And that choice would be to save his family. A terrible choice, but a choice nonetheless. Up until this point, Landa has been warm and charming. And then he says the line that drops the mask.
You're sheltering enemies of the state, are you not?
In this exact moment, the mask drops. Not dramatically, not with a raised voice or a sudden movement. Just a barely perceptible shift in the eyes and mouth. The warmth that he had before disappears, and what is left underneath is something cold and precise and completely in control. You are no longer looking at the charming eccentric person. You are looking at the colonel, the hunter, the professional, and he did not earn that rank by accident. Hans then switches back to French, and again, this is completely deliberate. Hans knows the Jews do not speak English.
Since I haven't heard any disturbance, I assume while they're listening they don't speak English.
Yes.
I'm going to switch back to French now, and I want you to follow my
By switching
mascarades.
back to French, he's given them enough to hear, but not enough to understand what is actually happening. Then he calls his soldiers in, using the word ladies in French.
Ah, mesdames!
As underneath the floor, the Jewish people hear a man call out what sounds like the daughters being invited back inside. There's nothing alarming at all, and there's nothing to panic about, as Landa almost certainly coordinated this with his men before arriving. But what's even more interesting is Lapidite has 3 daughters, and 3 soldiers walk through that door, the exact same number as Lapidite's family. As to anyone underneath those floorboards, hearing footsteps above and 3 sets of lighter footsteps leaving, then 3 sets of footsteps returning, it would sound exactly like the daughters are coming back inside. Yes, 3 German soldiers would be considerably heavier and make more noise, but in that moment of pure panic, underneath of a floorboard, that distraction is easy to miss. And this was Hans Landa planning every single detail before he even knocked on that door, down to knowing Lapidite's whole family. Even at the end, Landa as a person is allowing someone to escape, even though he could have easily had his troops chase her down in minutes. But in a way, I think he respected her survival from the gunshots and wanted the thrill of the hunt, as she was a challenge to him. Overall, the scene shows Hans Landa is a perfect opportunist. Hans uses subtle actions, questions, that let his victim know they've been caught, and that's what makes him the perfect villain to me. He lets you know you're doomed, but instead of ending it, he toys with his victims for fun. He may even say, "Au revoir, Shoshana!" which means see you again, and let you live in fear indefinitely, as Hans Landa is almost always 10 steps ahead of everyone else.